Well, Bellas, welcome to Pleasure Principles Sacred G-Spot Secrets to Igniting Your Magic, Money, Sex, and Business. My name is Sophia Leva-Marie with NurturingDivineBeauty.com, and today we're going to talk all about the guys. We've given so much consideration to the women, but I definitely want to make sure the guys are included. And I have a wonderful gentleman with me today, Baraka, and he is a really sought after speaker, teacher, and a new masculine coach, which I definitely want to ask about. So welcome, Zot. I'm so happy.
Thank you. Glad to be here with you.
Wonderful. So, you title yourself the new masculine coach. What does that even mean?
I'm glad you asked that. Quite honestly, the term is, I don't like the term. I don't really like any terms that puts any kind of box of convention on anyone. I just use that as a way to, just to draw interest. It's just, it creates a question in people's minds. So, I don't follow any creed, so to speak. The new masculine, really what it points to is just a man who is interested in his own evolution. It's just, who's just interested in his own awakening and his own growth. Again, it's not to put another box or prescription for anyone to follow. And so it's really about, for me, what keeps me interested in doing this work is to keep pushing the envelope, leaning into those sharp points around how can we evolve ourselves as a species, and especially for me around men's work. So again, it's an exploration into evolution, into our spiritual and psychological evolution.
Perfect. Yeah. And what does men's sexuality have to do with their evolution? How important is that?
Yeah, it's everything. It's everything. So for men to have a depth of understanding and have a deeper relationship with themselves and their own sexuality allows them access to just greater power overall. Having more intimacy with one's sexuality really means breaking free of conventions and breaking free of conditioning and programming of our society and whatever culture that you've come from. And, learning how to tap into your core sexual power as a way to greater spiritual awakening, greater growth, greater ecstasy, greater compassion, generosity. This is our storehouse of power, right? Our sexual energy. This is how we create universes. And one ejaculation, a man could populate the United States. What is it, like 20 times or something? That's how much power, potency is in there. And so, it's a gateway to being a more full, expressed, confident, loving, joyful human being is having a deep, intimate relationship to your sexuality and learning how to use it, learning how to move that through your body. So that's a really important piece. We're not trained in this. None of us are, especially men, are trained in the opposite, right? We're trained in goal orientation and negating intimacy with oneself. And so, I can go on, but it's a little bit like how we relate to the earth and having intimacy with the beauty of the earth and being disconnected from that, being disconnected from intimacy with anything in life is the programming that we've come through in the male lineage. And so being able to tap into your sexuality is really like it's a rocket booster to growth and awareness and success and confidence and everything.
That's perfect, because that's what this whole telesummit is about, is your power. And I also love that you bring out intimacy, because often that is considered a more feminine attribute, but you bring out that the intimacy is actually needed with absolutely everything. So how can men actually start to tap into that? Because as you say, men aren't trained to do this, and it's
Yeah.
a new paradigm. It's not what they're saying. There aren't a lot of examples. So where can they start?
I think maybe even before we talk about intimacy, we need to talk like in a way that men can relate to, because most men that I know and I work with don't necessarily walk around thinking, "Oh, I wish I had more intimacy."
Okay.
With that I want more intimacy. Some do, of course. There's plenty of men that do, but I think it's important for men that are watching to really tap into their own pain points, really look into what are the things that are causing you challenge or distress in your life. And without a doubt, intimacy is going to play a role in that. You're even if we look at one of the most basic thing that men want, which is more confidence.
Okay.
All right. How do you access more confidence in yourself? Well, confidence requires that you have intimacy with yourself. Confidence requires that you you have a level of skillfulness in connecting with other human beings, human connection. And if you talk to men who have issues around insecurity or lack of confidence, oftentimes we could throw in the idea of the nice guy syndrome in there. That where this shows up is when they're in connection with other people, their lack of confidence, their insecurity, when they're in the boardroom, when they're with their bosses, or when they're with even with their subordinates, when they're with their partners. And so, again, going back to the idea of what is the thing that's causing you pain, and then from there, kind of digging into your work around intimacy. Of course, we can bring in the idea of vulnerability. All of these things that we don't have training in, that which is really the foundation for this big cultural shift that's happening right now, right? The whole Me Too meme that's happening, movement. I'm not going to call it a meme. The movement is around, if we look at men who are in power and who don't have any mastery over their sexual energy, they don't have any mastery over their desire, they don't have any mastery over their desire for power. When you have a depth of intimacy and when you have some skillfulness and vulnerability, and you have learned how to play with your sexuality, you're not going to be running away into these kind of neurotic patterns that you see happening. And so first point is emotional mastery would be first on the list of how to create greater connection with other human beings, with all things. I love that. I think it's Suzuki Roshi, Zen teacher, says enlightenment is intimacy with all things. That's my own personal, that's why I do this work, is because of my own challenges with connecting with life, connecting with other beings. And so I haven't met a man, at least in the work that I've done in classes or one-on-one, that isn't really one of the core things that they're working on, is being able to more deeply connect, have a deeper and truer, authentic connection with other beings. And that's where the foundation of leadership happens too, which is another word that obviously women can connect to, but men can absolutely connect to that word of leadership. So where to start in intimacy is within yourself. And the first place to start within yourself is the path of emotional mastery, which really means learning how to work with your own emotion. And so as men become more skilled at working with their own emotion, which for some men, it may be the emotion of being like perhaps just being numb. That's obviously a huge challenge as well, as men not feeling. As you become more masterful of your own emotion, that allows men then to hold a more powerful space for their partners or for their women, which is something that I think most women want, is men to be able to hold that powerful space and presence for women to be in their emotion as emotional beings.
So thank you, first of all, for just leading me in the right direction, because obviously I don't have a male perspective.
No problem. Yeah.
Mastery is definitely something that is, of interest to everyone. And how can they actually start to work with that using their sexual energy? I mean, I know you mentioned pain points before, like where, like if you don't know where to go and you know what you're going for, how do you actually start this and start to kind of fuel that transmutation?
Well, there's many paths you could take on the path or the road of emotional mastery. That's really what you're asking. Um, one first thing I would say is it's very difficult to do it alone.
Right.
We don't, because we don't have eyeballs outside of us to look back at us. We can't really see ourselves. And so being able to see how we're showing up is in the world is really important. And so having, whether you're in a men's group or whether you have a friend who's really adept at some level of introspection or personal growth work, men's work is the most powerful way, without a doubt. It's a completely different experience than working with a woman, whether it's a woman therapist, psychotherapist, or like a tantra group or anything like that. When you're with other men, I should say it this way: when a man is with a woman doing any kind of personal growth work, there's a shift in his body, in his chemical changes in his body, the evolutionary biological shifts that happen. He goes into a different place. He acts differently, right? And so that's the power and beauty of men working together, either a man working with a men's coach or a man being in a men's group, is that number one, you're going to get raw, honest, critical feedback, of course, if that's invited, from other men on how you're showing up. And it's safer for men to go kind of inward and do deep inner work around their issues and their challenges when they're with other men. So that's the first thing I remind guys or tell guys that don't really aren't aware of that, is the power in a men's group is it's pretty radical. The safety that's there for men to be able to do inner work, really work on their core stuff, and maybe core stuff, maybe inner work, that might even be a confusion for someone. So and we can talk about that if you want, what that would look like.
Sure, please.
So one simple way to look at it is kind of what are men striving for in their life, which includes relationships and sex and success and business and in wealth and in that sort of thing. Usually men can relate to archetypes because we see these archetypal stories play out as the hero. So the 4 core archetypes that most of us use in the West, and there's so many more archetypes, but king, warrior, magician, and lover. And so whether you're tapping into that king, which is that wisdom, successful, powerful kind of father figure, that leader maybe of a big company or a visionary filmmaker or something like that. To each archetype, there is a shadow aspect or a shadow side or a negative side. And so I think most men that I know can easily relate to the warrior. That's probably the most easily relatable. That's that fiery, make it happen, kick ass kind of energy, right? The one that men are least intimate with is the lover, because that requires great depth of emotional mastery, sensitivity. And so I'm just pointing to archetypes as a way for guys to relate to the work. King, the warrior, the magician, or the magician is the one that could be maybe the spiritual adept or the healer or the alchemist who can transform things, transform himself, transform others, heal others. And then, of course, the lover. And to each one of these archetypes, there's a shadow side. And these shadow sides are what we all carry, all of us. If you have any idea what shadow work is, when I'm talking about deep inner work, is looking at aspects of ourselves that have been hidden, repressed, tucked away, or ignored from our childhood. And so, it could be something as simple as you wanted to go for the football team in high school and you got laughed at. And so this dream of being this powerful, warrior athlete kind of gets put away and hidden away. And so now there's the conditioning. And so there's kind of the foundation conditioning for lack of confidence or insecurity, or maybe that may be part of the shadow or the conditioning around being afraid to approach women. And that may show up also as just wanting to please people and wanting everyone to like you. So you act out in kind of these nice guy habits or patterns. And so in the inner work, we're kind of digging into all of these underpinnings of our psychology. And the simple act of getting to know your own psychology can shift it. It doesn't completely shift everything, but again, the power that shadow has, or the negative, hidden, repressed aspects of ourself that keep us limited in our sex life, in our relationships, in our finances, as long as they remain in the shadow or unseen or hidden or repressed or ignored, then they control our life. And so the idea is for us to, again, using this word intimacy, gain more intimacy, and actually use the power of the shadow to have a better life. And so within each shadow, there's also a gift. So I'm getting a little bit deep into kind of Jungian psychology here, but I just want to keep coming back to pointing to what's important for men in learning how to be more emotionally adept, being better in relationship, being more masterful lovers, not masterful in learning how to give their partner an orgasm, but mastery in the realm of human connection and intimacy. And so there's a little bit of an idea of what the inner work is, working on our deep internal stuff, our internal psychological, and also learning. Part of the path also is learning how to cultivate your own sexual power, your own sexual energy, and use that sexual energy. It's just like something very simple. When a woman walks in the movies, right? A woman walks into the big party and everyone stops and turns. What are they looking at? They're looking at her radiance, right? As she walks in, it's like, wow, everyone just kind of stops. That's like the typical movie picture, right? And so her radiance springs from her sexual energy, her sexual power. And so it's the same thing with men. When a man has access in a healthy way to his sexual power, sexual energy, that can be directed in really beautiful and powerful ways, whether it's serving others, or whether it's in service to a relationship or a partner, or being of service to the world, whatever that may be. There's a lot of cool, I don't know how deep you're getting into this, but just the whole idea of sex magic, of using your sexual energy to actually use the elements, earth, fire, water, air, ether, to create magic and manifest what you envision. I'll leave that there, but I thought that'd be fun. Yeah.
No, I love that. I mean, because I personally practice sex magic myself. Obviously, it would be different. In the masculine perspective. When you're talking about these archetypes, do you find that most men are actually relating from their shadow, or is it just something that's kind of running in the background?
Shadow is what affects us every day, in all ways. Everything in all ways that we think, that we speak, that we feel. Yeah, it affects us. I mean, it's our conditioning, how we've been conditioned around how we relate to everything. Our own sexual desires, wealth, money, relationship, friendships. I did want to clarify one thing I think is important, because I think it's an important thing for all of us in terms of the conversation around the masculine and the feminine. When you were referring to the masculine perspective, I want to go back to your very first question around what is the new masculine. Men don't have to be masculine.
Mm.
Women don't have to be feminine. I'm not giving you the masculine perspective per se,
Mhm.
unless I tend to really have a lot of that masculine energy coming through. Then perhaps, yeah, maybe I am. But I'm accentuating this point because there's a big conversation right now going on right around toxic masculinity. What does it mean to be a man? And so, how to put this? There are, we could say, an agreed upon sort of set of qualities that we could group into what is masculinity and then what is femininity, right? We can get into sort of the spiritual underpinnings from, let's say, the tantric perspective or Kashmir Shaivism, Eastern, the Eastern spiritual explanation of how these masculine and feminine energies naturally occur in the universe. And so, but to my point, that men don't have to fulfill any sort of idea of masculinity, because that's just perpetuating men living out of concept and how they're supposed to be. Are there certain qualities and traits that feel really good to cultivate and to exercise and to have present within us? Absolutely. Men want to feel that level of deep, we can say, masculine presence, clarity, decisiveness, those kinds of qualities. But also men absolutely want to feel, they want to feel flow when they're dancing. Men don't want to be in those masculine qualities when they're dancing, right? Decisiveness and clarity and forward, that. So, and then part of the conversation too is that there's this big conversation around women are so afraid that men have lost their balls. They've lost that masculine power because men have been squashed because they're afraid of acting in toxic masculine ways or being judged for being masculine. And so I'm not saying men should be any way other than the ways that are most going to serve them and serve life. Now, that being said, most of us tend towards our imbalances. Right. And they say this in Ayurveda too. And so if you were a man that was, as a boy, let's say that you were raised in a house where when you wanted to go do guy things, let's say you're raised by a single mom and you wanted to go do guy things with your guy friends, and your mom was like, no, you're going to practice piano and then you're going to help me cook. And let's say those kind of masculine qualities were kind of squashed a little bit. When he's older, he may actually say with all of his truth of his heart, I really don't like those kind of hyper-masculine ways of acting. I really like being a more sensitive person. That may be true, but it also may be shadow, or it also may be just, the idea of nature versus nurture, how we were nurtured, how we were raised. And so, is this getting too confusing? Am I going kind of too broad here?
No.
So the idea in the work is to really look at how are we acting from habit, from pattern, from habituation based on our upbringing. Are we repressing, powerful masculine attributes because we were taught that feminine attributes are better? Or the same for women. Let's say if a woman was natural, let's say her nature was that she loved pink and purple and sparkly, but then those were smashed down like, no, you need to finish doing your homework, you need to finish doing this, you need to stay on task, you need to stay focused. And so she developed a sort of hyper masculine qualities. Maybe when she's older, when she sees a woman that's really sparkly and pink and flowy, that may trigger her, and that may be something she's averse to. And so just to kind of round out this little thing I'm talking about, while I don't want men to have to fulfill any specific picture of what a masculine man is supposed to be, at the same time, I'm not saying that you just kind of follow your you follow a whim, like your internal thing says, oh, I really like being a more sensitive, sensitive, caring person, because you actually may be, acting out from a place of your nurturing or from your conditioning as a child. And so when we're doing men's work, we're kind of playing on a whole spectrum of different qualities, from the dark, kind of intense, maybe that dark energy of the controller, the manipulator, all the way into the light end of the spectrum, which is, the spiritual, lighthearted, deeply spiritual, enlightened yogi, so to speak. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So is it your habit and conditioning that kind of creates the polarity, or is the polarity more so the spectrum that you just kind of talked about?
Could you repeat that one more time?
Sure. With polarity, like, is it like the habit and conditioning, what men have been told, is that what creates polarity and, how they show up in their relationships? Or is polarity actually the spectrum of, like, including all of it?
I guess you could say in a way that spectrum has a polarity to it. I'm talking really about a range of qualities and emotions and energy that as you expand your range, because most of us live in a really narrow range of how we act, right? Even in our sexuality, our habituation, we're in a very narrow range all the time. And I'll see this with guys that maybe have intense anger issues, to guys who have, serious kind of nice guy, wallflower, people pleaser habits. That's the range they live in. And so for a guy who has the people pleaser, super sweet, sensitive, nice guy habit, for him to play down into the darker ranges are going to give him access to things that he's never used before, perhaps, even if it's just approaching a woman or in bed. Maybe his partner wants him to have a little bit more oomph, and he doesn't know how to access that. It's so ingrained and programmed in him to just play in this nice zone. Now we're talking about in sexual relationship. Now the woman we tend to stay at two poles, right? In sexuality, there tends to be, not always, obviously, but there tends to be one that's more, you could call it top bottom. You could say they're one that tends to be more submissive and one more penetrating, right? If you look at the classic kind of 3 stages that data talks about, when a man is in his 3rd stage of masculine, he is obviously very sensitive and he's very communicative, but he's also holding that deep, powerful presence for a woman to surrender into her full feminine. And so going back to the idea of a guy who plays in that really narrow place, sometimes a woman does want a man to take her and just flip her over from her back onto her tummy and take her from behind. But that energy to do that, a guy who is in these people pleaser, nice guy, kind of more submissive habits, he's not going to do that. And so the woman will tend to fill that gap. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about in heterosexual relationship, if a man is taking the more feminine role, a man will tend to fill that gap. And so I don't know if we froze here. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. It looks like you froze a little bit. I have your photo.
Okay. Okay, there we go.
There you go.
All right, so playing in that narrow range, what we want to do is we want to expand our range. For men, we want to expand the range, and in the same in our emotions. We don't only want to always show up in one emotional range. And so what I do with men is I work with men to expand their range of power. So let's say you're a guy who already tends towards the darker and the intense and the more kind of what we like alpha male kind of darker macho energy. he's going to need to expand his range all the way up into the more light, the spiritual yogi guy, that allows you to, at any moment, sort of within yourself, call up those qualities when they're needed in any situation, not only in sex and relationship, but in any situation. And so as you practice playing in this range from the dark to the light, it's really amazing to see what happens. I've seen so many men's lives completely radically shift from going from insecure, single guy with no, not even any belief enough in himself that he could ever have a family, to within a year and a half, having a partner, having a kid, and feeling completely shifted in their confidence. And I mean, I can tell those stories around sex as well. Men that have been raised in ultra religious families that have all that kind of wounding around sexuality, and to find that power within themselves to access their own sexuality and to have a relationship to their own genitals is pretty radical, and break kind of all the societal norms around what does it mean to be a man or be a sexual man. Yeah.
So for really having that embodied spectrum of all the emotions, do you actually start at the emotions, or do you start cultivating the sexual power to tap into those emotions?
Let me think about that. Well, you can start playing with sexual energy very simply just with your breath. I mean, there's this very simple breath practice you can do where for women can do it too, but you inhale down the front of your body down to your sexual energy, then you exhale your sexual energy up your spine. There's another one from the Taoist tradition through Mantak Chia, testicular breathing, where you learn to breathe your sexual energy from your testicles up your spine and then back down your spine. And what part of the purpose of learning how to move the sexual energy through your body is that you have access to it in other places. It's not just stuck at your little head. It moves through all the way through your big head and through your heart. And so you can learn how to move sexual energy with your breath. And obviously breath can be used as well when you're working with emotion. But I think your question was, if you're going to do this work, do you want to start with doing emotional work or sexual energy work first? Was that kind of the question?
Yes, just where do you start?
Where do I start? I think the place I start is with whatever's going on with the man. Whatever challenge, wherever he feels limited. Now, the interesting thing too is that, sometimes men think that their sex life is great and they think they're really great lovers and everything's beautiful. But so many times, so often we find that that's just a little bit of a limited perspective for themselves on their sex life. What they're experiencing is actually really limited. They think everything's fine. They may not actually get some true feedback from their partner about their depth of experience. It's kind of like what you don't know, you don't know. So if your level of enjoyment in your sex is here and you think this is great, through doing conscious sexual practice, through learning how to work with your sexual energy, through learning to expand your emotional range, you start having more heightened experience actually in your physical body. Your body's capacity to handle sensation becomes heightened. So our ability to expand ourselves sexually and in all ways is only limited by our capacity. And so now we're getting into the conversation around our nervous system. And so a huge portion of the work is around expanding our capacity. It's kind of like, a simple example would be if you are used to talking in front of a room full of 5 people for you to get on a stage in front of 5,000 people, you have to be able to expand your capacity to hold energy, because that's a lot of energy to be in front of that many people. And so through all these kinds of different processes that I'm talking about, you're expanding your capacity to be with a woman's emotion intensity, to being with your own emotional intensity. When you have deeper intimacy in sexuality, it activates more. It's like the idea of love is the force that frees us from our shadows, or from our woundings, or from our issues. So the more capacity that we have, the more we actually naturally clear our fears, our wounds, our traumas in our body. And so one way that we increase our capacity is through strengthening the nervous system. And there's many practices that we use. Expanding your emotional range increases your capacity to just be, capacity to be with other human beings, but especially capacity to be in a deep, powerful, loving, sexual relationship. Mm-hmm. And it's fun. It's really a lot of fun. It's not like super serious, heavy. It's something that's, who doesn't want some tools that will help you to be more confident, or to have, the ability to have deeper connection with people, to have more presence in your relationship, for a man to be able to hold more presence in his relationship, for his partner, for his children, to be a better father. Yeah.
And do you find that is what kind of motivates men, that they're trying to be better, for lack of a better word, for someone else? Or are they doing the growth for themselves?
Oh, no, they're doing it for themselves. Yeah. Well, actually, not all the time. Not all the time. And that's part of the work is I have someone I'm working with right now that is trying to really repair his relationship that's in big breakdown right now. And I have to remind him quite frequently, because everything that we're talking about doing, he says, yeah, and this will be great, because then she will see this, or she'll feel this. And so, yeah, not always, but that's the ultimate thing, right? Is to be an autonomous, sovereign being. I think that's what turns women on. That's what creates attraction, is when men have their own center of gravity. Mm-hmm. I think for anyone, when anyone has their own center of gravity, when their fulfillment in life is not coming from someone else. Mm-hmm. Approval. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, how, as these things are starting to shift, how do they start to relate to their own power first and start to look inside?
Can you ask that question one more time for me?
Let's see. So as they're starting to go into this shift, how can they really turn into, as you say, that autonomous power, and start to really relate to themselves differently as the man they're becoming, rather than the man they were? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think you're asking. How can a man sort of have his main focus and desire be on working on his internal life, as opposed to his external life. Mm-hmm. As you do the work, and as you begin to heal, transform, and shift how you feel inside of yourself, I think the natural inclination is to want to go more deeper inside of yourself. You're seeing the proof. You're feeling a shift within yourself. The really simple quote by the inspirational teacher Jim Rohn talks when he talks to mainly a lot of people in business. And so he says, if you want to climb the corporate ladder, you don't focus on climbing the corporate ladder. You focus on yourself. And we know this. We know this in the work, that the focus has to be on ourselves. The focus can't be on trying to receive, approval or praise from outside of ourselves, because that doesn't work. Love doesn't come from outside of ourselves. Love is not something that we receive. We don't really receive love. Love is something that is within us. And when we have a relationship to love within ourselves, then we can be more readily available to receive. It's all a projection. It's all a projection, right? Whether it's a shadow projection or it's a gold projection, meaning whether you're judging someone for being an ass, an idiot, rude, pushy, loud, whatever it is, or whether you're judging someone as being beautiful, kind, sweet, compassionate. And so one of the things that I learned early on in the work is the core wish or the core prayer or the core desire really should be that I pray that my longing for growth would be the greatest desire in my life. So if one's wish is that their greatest desire would be their longing for their own growth, then that's kind of your North Star. That's what's guiding you. That's what is in any and all interactions is what is highest in this situation for my own personal growth, my own evolution. And part of that path, of course, is to help all people on this planet. It's altruism. And so, or another way to put it is perhaps that if your prayer is to be in deeper devotion to life, it's a powerful thing to kind of guide you forward, because most of us live each moment from the moment we wake in the morning. What can I get? What can I have? What can I get? What can I do in life to make myself feel better? What can I have more of? And so it shifts the me orientation a little bit. Just the wish for your own personal growth actually shifts you into more generosity, because the natural the natural flowering of your own personal growth, when you are going deep enough, for most men, it's really interesting. Most men that I talk to, when we're going to do work together, whether in one of my online or my in-person programs, about 90, I would say at least 90% of them, when I ask, what do you want? They all want to give back to the world in some way. Even if they're a banker, or if they're a corporate guy, or if they're a musician or a yogi, or whatever kind of person they are. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that they have such similar visions. They want to open a healing retreat center where people can come, or men with addiction, or or not only men, but relationship. It's a really interesting thing. Most people that I run into want to in some way be of service to humanity. Yeah. Kind of went off on a tangent there, but yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that perspective, because so often as women, we don't see that. We have our own filters and projections of what the man should be or how he should show up. So is there... Oh,
yeah. That's a good point.
Yes. Is there something as women we can do to actually assist our men, husband, partners, boyfriends, in working on their own growth and turning their devotion into themselves and them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I get quite a few emails from women saying, I really want my husband, my partner to do your program, or how can I do that? And I tell them, I'm not going to tell you how you can manipulate or force or anything like that. It really has to come from the man. Of course, you can invite your partner. Absolutely. You can say, hey, I found this really cool site. It's got really great reviews, or I found, because I have my online men's program. It's a different site than my personal website. Yeah, all you can really do is invite your man into the work. Now, that being said, it depends on the state of your relationship. If a woman finds herself in a relationship that she is kind of fed up, so to speak, because I've done a lot of reading, and I'm really into social sciences and looking at women have, I'm going to digress for a second. Okay. So women have obviously been preparing for this day for a long, long, long time. Men haven't. Men have been in power, so they haven't had to prepare for shit. But women have been preparing. There's women's empowerment, women's groups, men's growth, women's growth, all these kinds of things. Women have been doing this for a long time. And so men do find themselves way behind the curve in terms of personal growth. So men are playing catch up right now. And so what I'm understanding is that the pool actually for women that are really want empowered men, I know that's kind of an all catch-all word, but for women that want really self-aware, conscious, introspective, empowered men, women are ending relationships sooner when they're dating. As soon as they find out that the man is not up to the standards that they want, that they're ending relationships. Women are ending relationships more than men are right now. And so women are looking for a good man, right? When I say a good man, I mean a man that's has a depth of understanding of himself, because then he can come to the relationship with so much more. So I said before that when there's nothing women really can do if a man doesn't want to, do any kind of personal growth work, you can always invite your man. You can show him a website. You can say, this looks really great to me. So there's one answer. And then the other answer would be dependent on what kind of relationship you're in. If a woman finds herself in a relationship where she's constantly frustrated because of a man's emotional immaturity, his inability to be vulnerable, his inability to really go deep in intimacy, then you can kick your guy's ass a little bit. I think it's okay, and I think men need a little bit. Like, hey, look, I've been talking to you about this for 3 years now, 2 years now. I want to go have deeper intimacy with you, and every time I try, we don't. It just doesn't happen. So what I'm actually, whatever kind of wording that you would want to use, but I'm asking you to do this. I need for you to do this. The woman's not telling the man that he needs to be any certain kind of way, that he needs to say certain things. She's claiming her desire and what she wants to have, what kind of relationship she wants. I want to have a relationship in which we're both really wide open, we're vulnerable, we can deeply share, where we want to create deeper intimacy in our sexuality that's not just about orgasm, where we want to experience each other spiritually. And so you can kick your man's ass a little bit. I think that's okay. So that's a little bit different than saying you can't make your man do anything. I think if you've never said anything to him before, all of a sudden you start kicking his ass and saying you need to go do this kind of work, might be a little shocking, but yeah, I think that's okay. Mm-hmm. What do you think for a woman to say to a man, hey, something needs to shift here. I found this thing. You can't say you don't know what you need to do. Here's something right here that you can do.
Right. And then what if your man actually brings you something like he's the one striving for his own growth? Like, what support could we give him? Or is there a kind of space? And I mean, of course it depends on each person, like it's a little bit different, but is there a way to allow him to have his growth and, be a type of support that maybe we're not doing?
Well, I think there is. There's ways that, look, anytime anyone in any relationship is focused on their own state, on their own beingness, on their own person, that's going to shift their partner. I've had a lot of men, I've worked with quite a few men, I won't say a lot, but quite a few men that come and do the work with me because they see their partners changing and they're afraid they're going to lose them because they haven't ever done anything before. They don't speak the language. They don't understand what she's talking about. 9 to 5, they're working. And other than that, they're just doing their stuff around the house. And there's no conversation. There's no understanding of that, of personal growth. But the woman is going to workshops all month long, and she's reading books. And so that can be definitely a little bit of an inspiration for men to go in and do some work. Yeah, I think that if a woman is deeply committed to her path and doing her work, there is in any, so whether it's a man or a woman, there's a natural falling away of the things that don't serve anymore. And that does happen a lot, whether it's friendships, communities, habits, things that you do, daily activities and things. That it's part of personal growth journeys, or spiritual growth journey, we can say, is things fall away that no longer are in alignment with where we're going. And a lot of times that does happen in relationship. I have seen, as I said many times, men come and say, my wife's been doing this stuff for years. I've been ignoring it. I haven't done anything. I need to catch up to her, and I want to catch up to her. But they have to be there doing it for themselves. They can't be there just so they can catch up to their wife. There has to be. And so as long as we go back to the conversation around, what do you want for yourself? What do you want to, how do you want to reinvent yourself? Where are the places that you feel limited, or you're the places where you're suffering, and that's our access point. But yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And then when you are going into that access point, seeing what you want to change, then, we briefly talked about it, but how can a man actually start to channel his sexual energy so that he actually starts to create the expansion in what he's wanting?
Okay, ask that one more time, please.
So how can the man channel his sexual energy to create the expansion for his pain points that he's wanting to change or grow?
Well, I think first of all, commit to getting on the path of sexual growth. There's many different ways that you can do it. Learning how to move your sexual energy, learning how to cultivate sexual energy, learning that your sexual appetite isn't threatening or dangerous, as long as it's not coming out sideways or manipulative. Seeing where he is maybe perhaps not showing up powerfully in a sexual relationship, and with that, having enough drive to go out and find. You can't do it alone. It's very difficult to do this kind of work alone. You need some sort of guide on the path, or reading books, or watching videos. But the first place to start really would be in self-exploration. I mean, even for men to just look at their own genitals, look at their own sexual organs and touch them and have a different kind of relationship to them. I mean, it's the same thing with women. I mean, I've seen things where a woman seeing her yoni for the first time, like in a mirror. It's kind of shocking, but this is how we're through these religious filters, how people were taught. And so for a man to begin to have a sexual relationship with himself, it sounds so strange for a man. It's going to sound really, really odd, like a really weird thing to do. But we call it cock power, just like women call it pussy power. There is, there's a, in India, obviously there's the lingam. They're all over India, the Shiva lingam. It's the place of masculine, or we can say consciousness. And so there's a lot of power in there. But if you're just relating to it as merely a tool to orgasm, you're so limited in that. We can talk a little bit about, I don't like to go too deep into ejaculation bypass, because it can get confusing for men, but this is one of the biggest leaky areas, is the habit of ejaculation. Mm-hmm. Your ejaculation is your life energy. It's your immune system. It's your fluid. It's like the oil in the oil lamp. If you pour out the oil and you just burn the wick, then it's done. There's a an old Taoist teaching that talks about at what age you should be, how many times you should be ejaculating, maximum at what age. And so this is a good place to start, is deepening your relationship with your cock, with your sexual organ. I don't know if you use words like that on this. I'm guessing you probably do.
Yes.
It's not off limits, right? And learning breath work is probably the first way to learn how to begin to breathe and move sexual energy through your body. This is a really, for men who have a particular challenge around having really, tend to see men into two camps. Men who tend to have hot desire and men who tend to have cool desire. Cool desire are guys that don't have that driving sexual. When they see a hot woman on the street, they don't have that, They may have a cooler desire when they're with their partner. It's a little, perhaps more in the realm of sensuality and sensitivity, but it's not that hot desire. For guys like that, I work with them to cultivate a little hotter desire, because there tends to be habituation with guys that have cool desire. They tend to, not always, not a complete blanket, but generally, and I've worked with lots of huge groups of men, men that have cool desire tend to fall into the camp more as the ones who don't claim desire. They're a little bit more people pleaser, nice guy. Mm-hmm. Guys who have really hot desire, for the most part, tend to be guys who are more fiery, like me, kind of. They're able to speak out loud, and they show up sometimes hyper masculine. And so when a man sees, for example, if a man tends towards hot desire and he sees that woman, a woman on the street that really activates that hot desire in him, having breath practices in that moment can actually shift you from objectification into subjectification, or moving from object into subject internally experiencing the beauty of the being in front of you, rather than seeing it as an object to be conquered or to ejaculate in. Because when that driver happens to just, this is another way that men relieve stress, is through ejaculation. And so men that have hot desire, their drive, and that part of that desire is to relieve their stress of the attraction. Mm. And so you can learn to work with your sexual energy in a way where that energy that gets activated in you when you see a really attractive being, feminine or female or a woman, that you can use that energy for all sorts of, you can use it in sports, you can use it in the boardroom, you can use it, playing soccer with your buddies or whatever it is. That energy is there, accessible to you. And so it's about transforming neurotic tendencies, neurotic sexual energy, we could say, into enlightened sexual energy. And so desire is great. For men to learn how to, because we're shamed about desire. We're told, so many men are told, you're a pig, or you're objectifying. There's a lot of shame around that. So many men that I work with and see repress desire because they've been taught it's wrong. And desire is important. Desire is the thing that drives us, right? And in all areas, as long as you're relating to desire really in a healthier way. And then at the far end of the spectrum, I would say that men who tend towards people pleaser, they're big desire repressors as well. They just want to please others, and they repress desire. And so don't you think there's something a little bit sexy when a man is not only solely focused on just giving you an orgasm, but he's also tapped into his own desires and he is relating you in a playful way? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So learning to play with desire and learning to use your sexual energy, using your breath to move sexual energy through your body. One of the biggest things, again, for guys with more hot desire is that those drivers, when they see a really attractive woman, is what do they do? And it's something as simple as just learning to take in the beauty of what's in front of you, rather than letting that sort of, unconsciously have you act out in some kind of stupid way. which we can do pretty easily. Simple practice. I use it all the time. If I see a really attractive woman and I get sexually activated, I just go into breathing. And so she no longer becomes the object of my desire, but rather I'm just in relationship with desire within myself. And it actually, I haven't had this tested by scientists, but I actually feel that it stimulates testosterone production in my body. You know, like, you know that thing they do in New Zealand, the haka, where they pound their knees like the rugby teams do it, and it's part of the Maori tradition. That activates that kind of powerful, that kind of energy. Like when guys get pumped up, that stimulates testosterone in the body. And so I think desire does too, when you're breathing and you're activating that in your body. And testosterone is great. You can use it in a really powerful way as long as you're not just following your neurotic shadow. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. I love how you're giving a few examples of how you can really channel that power. But you can do it in the moment. Like it doesn't have to be, just in sex, but it's just to use it, like you say, in the boardroom and, with your friends, if you're doing sports or
if you have confidence issues as well. You can literally sit, you can just sit and you can think about something that turns you on. If you're a heterosexual man, for example, you can think, or homosexual man, that you can think about a woman that turns you on, let that energy be activated in your body, and then you literally breathe it through your body. You inhale through your nose, you breathe down the front of your body, past your heart, down past your genitals, you exhale up your spine, and you're just circulating desire through your body. And that can actually change your state. Something so simple as that can change your state and how you're showing up in terms of your confidence. Even for guys that are, have a lot of fear around going up and talking to a woman, activate your testosterone, activate desire in your body, breathe it through your body, because breathing also, it strengthens your nervous system. And, if you can approach a woman from that place of personal power, you don't really give a shit what her response is. If she says, oh, piss off, or, oh, hey, you're interesting, let's talk. It doesn't really matter because you're just in your own experience of your own internal feeling body. And that feels really good as opposed to, oh, what's she, I don't do well with women and what's she going to say? And I get so insecure.
Right.
Fuck that.
Yes, exactly. And the woman would feel that. And, if he's kind of having that wobbly, it's not going to happen.
It's not very attractive. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, so many men, I can see how they would benefit, more testosterone, more confidence, using and channeling their desire. And you actually have a free gift for the men in our audience that can help them tap into this. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, I have more coming on. I have more on the way, but I have a men's embodiment practice. Very simple, but useful. I still use it all the time. Any kind of embodiment work, it doesn't matter where you fall on the spectrum, whether you think you're a totally confident, sexually powerful man, it doesn't matter. This practice is about, it's deepening your ability to be in the presence of awareness, in your own presence of awareness. And some make also, you could say that this is partially what you're doing in some meditations, but this one specifically around the warrior and activating that warrior archetype and the presence of the warrior within your body. When I do this practice, every time I do this practice, when I walk out of the house, I can see more, I can feel more in life. I can see more green in the leaves. I can feel more sparkle in life. I can feel the vibrations in my vehicle more. I'm more kind of in tune with my car when I'm driving it, with other people. It helps me to feel more grounded sitting here with you, or if I'm working with a client or any kind of business meeting. So it's just a very simple embodiment practice, but embodiment is key to the work that I do because men already live in their heads. We live in our heads, and this is where we're trained to be. And so This really drops you more down deep into your body to have a more embodied interaction in the world. So yeah, I'm offering that to men. I don't know if you're going to put in the email how to, okay. Yeah. So that's on my website on zotbaraka.com. Yeah.
Yes, the link below us. So put your name and email below when you're ready to drop more into your body, your desires, your power. And then Zot, just to wrap up, if there was one sacred secret for men to really embody their power and to get what they really want, what would that be?
Wow. If there was one thing that I could suggest to men to get them most in their power to get what they want, mm-hmm. I would say it would be to become unhidden, to become more vulnerable, to become more real with all the people around us. It takes so much energy to live in that mask, to live in that programming that we have as men, that everything's okay. I got this all under control. And so practicing vulnerability and unhiding yourself is a huge relief. It frees up so much energy, because think about how much energy it takes to perpetuate a lie. It takes a lot more energy to perpetuate a lie, and you have to remember a lot more things to live in that. So vulnerability, becoming unhidden, revealing more of yourself with all the people in your life, and dedicating yourself, literally saying out loud, I am dedicating myself to my own personal evolution, my own growth, and my own potential. We know that just writing something down or journaling changes cortisol levels in the body by like 60%. It relieves stress in the body. So by the same token, speaking something out loud has a real power in it. And so speaking out loud that I'm dedicating myself to my own personal growth, my own personal power. It's a little bit of what I call self-initiation. And initiate yourself on the path of the healthy masculine, or initiate yourself on the path of evolving as a man. Own that, claim that, and so much will open up for you. So much can open up when you own that or claim that. Yeah. And we're going to mention the masterclass. Is that something we're going to mention?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I believe it's going to be in April for men that are interested in attending, men who are on this, that want to attend a men's masterclass on confidence, sex, and money. They'll just sign up on the list there, and they'll get information on how to do that, right?
Yes, perfect. So again, gentlemen, if you're interested in receiving that embodiment practice, and if you want to go a little further into this invitation into more confidence, sex, and money, put your name and email below. Zot, I really want to thank you for your perspective and what you're putting forth for men, so that we can really co-create together, the divine feminine and the divine masculine coming together, and really kind of creating a new paradigm of the masculine that's in his own power, and going forward for his partner, for the altruistic desires and for the world. So I really
absolutely, for the world, especially right now, helping this gender balance shift to happen in a graceful way.
Yes. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this work.
Absolutely.
All right.
And if you're looking for more of Zot's work, please go to zotbaraka.com. That link is also below, so you can check out how you can go further when you're really wanting to go into this initiation of your power.
And also my men's online program that happens once a year called it's newmasculineprogram.com. New Masculine Program. We have phenomenal guests like Marianne Williamson to Kyle Cease, all kinds of brilliant people that show up on this online men's program.
Awesome. So guys, you are not alone. The men.
No. No.
can help guide you, and you can have your own community so you can do this work.
That's right. If you're interested in leading men's work, it's growing. We're trying to create a global community of men that are leading their own men's groups. That's one of my goals. Yeah.
Yes, that would be
okay.
Beautiful. So again, we'll put those links below, and I want to thank you all for showing up for another wonderful session. This in a masculine perspective of pleasure principles, sacred G-spot secrets to igniting your magic, money, sex, and business. See you tomorrow. Ciao for now.
Bye-bye.